Pete also touched on it this morning in his keynote. I don't know if all of you were there, some of you missed it. But whenever we go read the headlines today, there's some trends that we're observing. One is there's global volatility, there's economic uncertainty, whether it's coming from global trade war or unrest, or there's rising oil price, or there's climate change, or there is Brexit, or name it. And today this is becoming routine. It wasn't the case some time ago. What we are also seeing is that sustainability is beginning to matter. The banks like Commerzbank, every year they check thousands of applications to ensure that the customers that they're investing in, they comply with environmental, social, governance criteria. If you look at businesses, they're committing to no deforestation. So these are some of the trends we are seeing. And then experience matters today more than ever before. If you all remember the United Airline incident where the passenger was forcibly dragged out, that one incident or one experience brought down United's market value by over $1 billion overnight. So experience matters. What we are also seeing is that there is a gap in trade finance, and that gap, it is widening every day. Today it stands at $1.5 trillion, and if we don't do anything about it, it's going to rise to $2.4 trillion in the next couple of years. And this number, it represents the amount that has been requested for finance and it has been rejected. And 44% of trade finance applications that is received, it comes from micro, small, medium enterprises. And half of them are rejected every year. And 70% of these applications that are rejected, they have no access to alternative capital. So these are some serious issues. So what do businesses need to foresee, to respond to such change? So if you look at the digital supply chain, right, typically it's concerned with the flow of material, flow of information, and today digital supply chain, it provides much of the capabilities that you need to have this total visibility, to have control, to be able to monitor the flow of material, to look at any exceptions, to analyze, to act. But at the end of the day, supply chain professionals, they're only looking at cost. How can we drive down cost? They're not looking at what is the opportunity. How can we contribute to the revenue, to the growth, to profitability, to working capital, to cash flow? And this is where I see the convergence of physical supply chain, financial supply chain, and it is imminent. Because for every flow of material in the physical supply chain, there's also a cash flow, there is a financial flow. And that will drive outcomes. As somebody once said, if the physical supply chain, it is the heart of a healthy company, the financial supply chain is its lifeblood. But of course, there are challenges. There are many of them. First of all, many of the processes that you need to run, like sourcing, invoicing, billing, payables, they're still manual. And those who embarked on the digital transformation journey, they also find themselves in a perplexed situation because many of these processes, they're running in disparate systems, landscapes. So where is the opportunity in front of us? So if you go talk to anybody in the financial side, right, they look at payment as a liability. It is a fulfillment of an obligation. And the opportunity is in converting that into a strategic asset. By automating the financial supply chain, much of the processes in there, and offering new solutions like supply chain financing and other services. Now what I'm going to show you is how we can use technology. Blockchain, you heard about it in the morning. I'll leave it for others to talk about that, but I'm going to talk about robotics, ML, AI, how these technologies are being embraced within organizations to automate, to streamline much of the operations. So this is one example. So this is a real example of a customer that we worked with. This is a telco provider. And what they observed is that in their account payable, 40% of the workload that they see is related to vendor inquiries. So basically they have thousands of suppliers, and on an average they receive hundreds of queries per day. Simple queries. When did I get paid last? When will I get paid next? And just to respond to these queries, they have set up a help desk, right, that can respond to these queries 24/7. It's It's a perfect use case of how this can be automated. So now using RPA, using ML, next time you get a query, we do speech to text, we derive what is the intent, then we fire some action in some backend, either using API or using some bot, and this whole process can be automated. So it used to take 5 to 15 minutes average processing time per query. And now using technology, we've been able to see 60 to 80% reduction in supplier payment inquiries. And it approximately amounts to 30% in savings. So another example, so this is not from SAP, it's an example I found on the internet. There's another process around LC issuance. Typically, to issue the LC and to do the validation and do the authorization, again, it's a very manual, repetitive, laborious, time-intensive process. And now using RPA and ML and AI, you can reduce that by 60%. And you've also seen that those companies who've adopted these technologies, they've seen 70% reduction in FTE for manual data entry. Then there's the classic process, right? Any organization, they are always reconciling, the invoice to payment, to what was received, what was purchased. All of this reconciliation process can also be automated using ML, AI. That's what we are seeing, right? So in companies that are adopting these technologies, they can process up to 90% of the invoices automatically, because your ML, your AI, it has learned based on historical data how some of these transactions were settled. And it can also automatically clear based on certain rules and thresholds. And in some cases, of course, it will be flagged for exception and then you have to do manual processing. But with technology, you can reduce the write-offs, you can bring in more transparency on invoice and payment status for suppliers. And then there are some customers who've taken it to the next level, right? Where the buyers and the suppliers, they're all on the same platform. They're all on the same network, like AribaNet. So the purchase order, it is directly integrated with the payment, with the invoice, with the settlement. So there's no need to do that reconciliation. It's automatically reconciled. And of course, then you see some new innovations that's becoming very popular, like supply chain financing. So if you are a buyer or if you're a buying organization, then you want to hold on to your cash as long as possible. On the other hand, if you're a supplier, you want to get paid fast. You want accelerated payment, accelerated capital, accelerated cash flow. So how can you maximize the DPO for buyers and at the same time reduce the DSO for the suppliers? And that's where third-party financing comes into play. So in summary, keep it short. So we are seeing that financial services and supply chain is becoming popular, and especially for large buying organizations to protect the strategic components of the supply chain, like these suppliers that they transact with. However, access to finance is still a big constraint, and it is a critical barrier for these micro, small, medium enterprises, which we discussed earlier. There's still that gap of $1.5 trillion. And unless we come up with some radical innovation, we're not going to close that gap anytime soon. Like next generation KYC, you build this customer profile once and then everyone can use it, right? Or next generation financing, where you're not depending on the credit history, but you're using alternate data.